All right, so are you ready to dive into some, like, serious life-saving stuff today?
I am.
Because we're talking all about CPR AEDs and the world of first aid.
Yeah.
And we're going deep with excerpts from this free online course that we found by Allison.
Cool.
And I promise we're skipping all the, like, website fluff
Right.
to get right to the good stuff, the
Yeah.
actual knowledge that can really make a difference if you're ever, like, in an emergency situation.
For sure.
Imagine just being in a situation where someone needs help,
Yeah.
and instead of freezing up, you're like, I know exactly what to do.
Exactly.
That's the kind of confidence we're going for today.
That's the goal. And, it all starts with understanding that first aid is so much more than just bandages and antiseptic.
Right.
It's about that initial response.
Okay.
Those critical first steps that you take before professional help arrives.
Okay, so let's say, like, I'm at a restaurant.
Yeah.
And someone just, like, collapses next to me.
Okay.
What are those first steps?
Yeah.
Is it all about, like, checking for a pulse?
Well, checking responsiveness is key.
Right.
You want to gently tap their shoulder and ask loudly, "Are you okay?"
Okay.
But it's also about looking for those obvious signs. Are they breathing normally? Is there any severe bleeding?
Oh, okay.
It's like being a detective, gathering clues to inform your actions.
So, like, speaking of being prepared,
Yeah.
I've always wondered, what are the absolute must-haves in a first aid kit?
Yeah. You want the basics, of course.
Yeah.
Bandages, gauze pads, antiseptic wipes.
Right.
But a truly effective kit is personalized.
Okay.
Do you have allergies?
Yeah.
Are you hiking in the wilderness?
Yeah.
You need to think about your individual needs and potential risks.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like having a toolkit with only a hammer isn't going to help if you need a screwdriver.
Exactly.
Right.
And just like you'd maintain your car or your bike,
Yeah.
a first aid kit needs regular checkups too.
Right.
Make sure nothing is expired and you have enough of everything.
Okay, so we've got our detective hat on.
Okay.
We've got our kit ready.
Right.
But then, like, things get real.
Yeah.
Like, someone's heart stops, kind of real.
Right.
Enter CPR.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen it a million times in movies.
Right.
But how does it actually work to, like, bring someone back?
CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, is all about manually keeping the blood flowing and oxygen going to the brain when the heart has stopped.
Okay.
It's a combination of rescue breaths,
Okay.
where you're literally breathing for the person,
Right.
and chest compressions, which mimic the heart's pumping action.
Yeah.
Studies show that bystander CPR can double or even triple a person's chances of survival.
Really?
Yeah.
Double or even triple?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge.
Wow. But I have to admit, the thought of rescue breaths has always, like, kind of grossed me out.
I get it. It can feel awkward.
Yeah.
But in those moments, it's about pushing past your own discomfort and focusing on getting oxygen into their lungs.
Okay.
You pinch their nose closed, seal your mouth over theirs, and give 2 breaths, each about 1 second long.
Okay. 2 breaths, got it. And
Yeah.
then what is it time for those, like, intense chest compressions?
Then it's time for compressions.
Okay. I bet it takes a lot of strength.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
It's more about technique.
Okay.
You place the heel of your hand on the center of their chest, between the nipples, interlock your fingers, keep your arms straight, and push down hard and fast, aiming for about 2 inches deep.
2 inches.
At least 2 inches.
Whoa, that seems pretty deep.
Yeah, it needs to be to effectively compress the chest and get the blood circulating.
Got it.
You're aiming for a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute.
Wow.
About the same beat as the song Staying Alive.
Oh, staying alive. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 30 compressions.
Yep.
Then 2 more rescue breaths.
Yes.
And you just keep doing that.
And you keep repeating that cycle.
Okay.
Until professional help arrives or the
Mhm.
person shows signs of life, like breathing on their own or moving.
Gotcha.
It can be tiring, but remember, every compression, every breath could be making a difference. It's literally like you're their lifeline in that moment.
It's pretty amazing to think about.
Mm.
So we've covered checking for responsiveness, breathing for someone, and manually pumping their heart.
Right.
What could possibly be next?
Well, let's talk about another common and often terrifying emergency.
Okay.
Choking.
Ugh, choking.
Yeah.
I just feel like it could happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
It can happen so fast.
Yeah, I've had a few close calls myself, I'll admit.
For sure.
Wow.
It is a common occurrence, and what makes it even more critical is knowing the different techniques for infants, children, and adults.
Okay.
What works for an adult could actually be harmful to a baby.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So it's important to know the differences.
So what's the, like, key difference there?
Infants and children have smaller airways and more delicate structures.
Right.
For an infant, you'd use a combination of back blows and chest thrusts,
Okay.
while for a child, you'd use abdominal thrusts,
Okay.
but with less force than you would for an adult.
Wow, I had no idea. There were so many variations.
Yeah,
So for an adult, we're talking about like the Heimlich maneuver.
that's right.
Yeah.
You stand behind the person, wrap your arms around their waist, and make a fist with one hand just above their belly button.
Okay.
Grasp that fist with your other hand and give quick upward thrusts into their abdomen.
So you're like giving them a bear hug from behind.
Yeah, like a bear hug.
But with a fist right under their rib cage.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're trying to use the air in their lungs to force out whatever's blocking their airway.
Gotcha.
Keep giving thrusts until the object is dislodged or they become unconscious.
Yeah. Take a deep breath, everyone. This is intense.
That's serious stuff.
But seriously, it's incredible to realize that, like, we have the power to help in these situations.
That's the beauty of first aid knowledge. It's empowering.
Yeah.
It allows you to act to potentially save a life.
Yeah.
And speaking of life-saving, have you ever wondered what it would be like to have a portable device that could analyze a heart rhythm and deliver a shock if needed?
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Right.
But are you talking about...
AEDs or automated external defibrillators
Okay.
are just that.
What is
They're
that?
becoming increasingly common in public places,
Yeah.
and they can be truly life-saving.
All right, let's unpack this AED thing, because I've always been a little intimidated by those.
I understand.
They look pretty complicated.
They might look intimidating, but trust me, they're designed to be user-friendly,
Okay.
even in a high-stress situation.
All right.
They have voice prompts that guide you through every step.
Okay, so let's say I'm like in a situation where someone has collapsed, and I suspect it might be cardiac arrest.
Right.
Would an AED always be the right tool to use?
Well, first, you'd always follow those initial steps we talked about,
Right.
checking for responsiveness,
Oh, yeah.
calling for help,
Yeah.
and starting CPR if needed. But if an AED is available, definitely grab it.
Right.
Most public places have them clearly marked and easily accessible.
So you got the AED,
Yeah.
you turn it on, and then what do you
Mhm.
need to be like some sort of medical expert to figure out how to use it?
Not at all. Once you turn it on, the AED starts talking to you,
Right.
guiding you through the entire process.
Okay.
You'll expose the person's chest
Right.
and attach the electrode pads.
Okay.
They're usually marked with pictures showing you exactly where they go.
So the pads are on. What happens next?
The AED will then analyze the person's heart rhythm,
Okay.
and that's where the magic happens.
Uh-huh.
It's actually determining if a shock is needed.
Whoa.
All you have to do is follow the prompts.
So it's basically telling you what to do.
Exactly.
No need to make any like tough decisions yourself?
It'll say either shock advised or no shock advised.
Okay.
If a shock is needed, the AED will charge itself up and you'll press the shock button when prompted.
Okay. It sounds so simple, but I bet there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
AEDs are incredible pieces of technology.
Yeah.
They can literally be the difference between life and death.
This is all so fascinating.
It is.
It's making me realize just how much power we have to make a difference in like an emergency.
Absolutely.
But it's also a bit overwhelming, like thinking about all these different scenarios.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
Right.
But remember, we're breaking it down step by step.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is that you're here, you're listening, you're learning.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So for our listener who's been like hanging on every word, what's the one thing we want them to take away from this deep dive so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Anyone can be a lifesaver.
Yeah.
It's not about being a doctor or a paramedic.
Right.
It's about having the knowledge and the willingness to act.
It's about being empowered, not paralyzed by fear.
Exactly. And, sometimes just staying calm and offering reassurance can be the most powerful first aid you can give.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. We've got the big picture.
Yeah.
But now I want to get into the nitty-gritty details of some of these techniques.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's start with like the ABCs of CPR. What does that even mean?
Yeah, so those ABCs stand for airway, breathing, and circulation.
Okay.
The three vital elements we focus on when someone's heart has stopped.
Right.
And just like the alphabet,
Yeah.
we tackle them in order.
So first up, airway.
Airway.
What's the deal with that?
It's all about making sure the person's airway is clear so air can get to their lungs.
Right.
You gently tilt their head back and lift their chin,
Uh-huh.
opening up that pathway for those life-saving breaths.
That makes sense. But what if there's like something physically blocking their airway?
Yeah.
Like a piece of food or something?
That's when you might need to use the Heimlich maneuver,
Right.
which we talked about earlier, to
sorry.
try and dislodge the object.
Right, those abdominal thrusts.
Yep.
So if the airway is clear, then we move on to breathing.
Exactly.
Okay.
You listen and feel for signs of breathing for no more than 10 seconds.
Okay.
If they're not breathing or only gasping,
Yeah.
it's time to start rescue breaths.
Those rescue breaths again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I pinch their nose, seal my mouth over theirs,
Yeah.
and give 2 breaths each lasting about 1 second.
That's it.
Okay.
You providing that vital oxygen their body needs.
Right.
And then we move on to the C circulation.
Okay.
This is where those chest compressions come in.
All right, showtime.
All right.
Remind me again, how do we do those compressions correctly?
Okay.
Where do we put our
How
hands?
hard do we push?
Remember, it's more about technique than brute force.
Okay.
Place the heel of one hand on the center of their chest, right between the nipples,
Right.
and then interlock your fingers with your other hand.
Okay.
Keep those arms straight, and using your body weight, push down hard and fast,
Mm-hmm.
at least 2 inches deep. 2 inches?
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see why they call it CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
Right.
We're basically doing the heart's job for it.
That's a good way to put it. And just like the heart has a rhythm,
Right.
so do your compressions.
Okay.
Aim for about 100 to 120 compressions per minute.
Gotcha.
Remember the beat of staying alive?
Staying alive.
Keep it in your head.
Okay, 30 compressions, then 2 rescue breaths,
Yes.
and repeat until help arrives, or they show signs of life.
That's right.
Got it.
Yeah.
This is heavy stuff. But honestly, it's also incredibly empowering to know that we have the potential to make such a difference.
It really is. And, it's not just about CPR.
Right.
First aid covers a vast range of situations, treating burns, handling fractures, even knowing how to respond to environmental hazards.
Whoa, that's a lot more than I ever realized.
Mm.
So where do we even begin to learn all that?
That's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back. So before the break,
Yeah.
we're just starting to talk about like the sheer breadth of first aid. It's so much more than just CPR, right?
Absolutely. First aid is like this giant toolbox filled with knowledge and skills to handle all kinds of situations.
Okay.
Everything from minor cuts and scrapes to more serious stuff like burns or fractures.
Okay, so let's say I'm like dealing with a burn.
Okay.
Is it always as simple as like running it under cold water?
That's a good starting point for minor burns,
Okay.
but there's actually a lot more nuance to it.
Right.
First, you need to assess the severity of the burn.
Okay.
Is it first degree, just redness, second degree with blistering,
Okay.
or third degree where the skin might look charred or white?
Whoa, charred skin.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty intense.
It can be, and those severe burns definitely require immediate medical attention.
Okay.
But for minor burns, cool running water is key
Right.
for the first 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
It helps to stop the burning process and reduce pain.
And what about those blisters?
Yeah.
Should you like pop them or leave them alone?
Resist the urge to pop. Blisters actually act as a natural protective barrier,
Oh.
preventing infection.
Okay.
If a blister does break, gently clean it with mild soap and water and cover it with a sterile bandage.
Okay. Noted. No popping blisters.
No popping.
What about other like common first aid situations?
Sure.
Like what if someone twists their ankle?
Ah, the classic sprained ankle. I think most of us have been there at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
In those cases, remember rest, ice compression, and elevation?
Rice?
Yeah.
It sounds more like a side dish than a first aid technique.
Well, it's just as essential as any other first aid skill.
Right.
Rest means staying off the injured ankle.
Okay.
Ice helps reduce swelling.
Okay.
Apply it for 20 minutes at a time, several times a day.
Okay.
Compression means wrapping the ankle with an elastic bandage.
Uh-huh.
And elevation means keeping the ankle raised above the heart.
So basically pamper that ankle like it's royalty.
Exactly.
Right.
And speaking of pampering,
Okay.
let's circle back to building that personalized first aid kit we touched on earlier. Okay.
It's like creating your own mini emergency room,
Right.
tailored to your specific needs and adventures.
It's funny. I always thought of a first aid kit as this like one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Yeah,
But it makes so much sense to personalize it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about your lifestyle, your hobbies, your medical history.
Right.
Do you have allergies?
Uh-huh.
Are you prone to motion sickness?
Yeah.
Do you hike in remote areas?
Right.
All of those factors should influence what you include in your kit.
So beyond the basics like bandages and antiseptics,
Right.
what are some items people might not think to include?
Well, if you're traveling to a different country, having a basic first aid phrase book in the local language could be invaluable.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that.
And if you're venturing into the wilderness, a whistle, a compass, and a space blanket could be lifesavers.
Those are great tips.
Yeah,
It's like be prepared for the unexpected, right?
exactly.
Because you never know what life might throw your way.
You never know. And while we're on the topic of unexpected situations,
Yeah.
let's talk about AEDs again for a moment.
Okay.
Remember those like remarkable devices
Yeah.
that can analyze a heart rhythm and deliver a shock if needed?
Powerful little things.
Oh yeah, the pocket-sized cardiologists.
Right.
I'm still amazed that something so small can have such a huge impact.
It's pretty amazing.
But I have to admit, I still feel a bit intimidated by them.
Yeah.
What if I mess up or do something wrong?
I understand that feeling, but honestly, AEDs are designed to be as foolproof as possible.
Okay.
They guide you through the entire process with clear voice prompts.
Right.
Think of it like having a personal coach right there with you,
Okay,
telling you exactly what to do.
that's reassuring. But I've heard that using an AED on someone who doesn't actually need a shock can be dangerous.
Right.
Is that true?
That's a common misconception.
Okay.
AEDs are incredibly sophisticated.
Yeah.
They analyze the heart rhythm and only deliver a shock if it detects a life-threatening arrhythmia. So if the person doesn't need a shock, the AED won't give one.
So it's like smart enough to know.
It's very smart.
Wow, that's pretty amazing technology.
Yeah.
So if an AED is so smart and easy to use, why is CPR still so important?
That's a great question. CPR is like that immediate bridge,
Okay.
keeping the blood flowing and oxygen circulating until an AED can be used or professional help arrives.
Okay.
It buys precious time and can significantly increase the chances of survival.
So it's like a dynamic duo,
Yeah,
CPR and AEDs working together to give someone the best possible chance.
exactly. And it's incredible to think that something as simple as learning a few techniques
Right.
and having access to these devices can empower everyday people to make a life-saving difference.
It really is. It's like we're all potential heroes just waiting for the chance to step up.
I love that because at the end of the day, first aid is all about human connection.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we have a responsibility to care for one another.
It's about realizing that we don't have to be doctors or nurses to make a difference in someone's life.
Exactly.
We just need to be willing to act.
You said it perfectly. And that willingness to act starts with being prepared,
Okay.
both mentally and practically.
So for our listener who's been with us on this journey,
Yeah.
what are some actionable steps they can take right now to feel more prepared for an emergency?
Well, I always encourage people to take a certified first aid and CPR course.
Okay.
The hands-on practice is invaluable.
Yeah.
And then start building that personalized first aid kit we talked about.
Right.
It's like a fun little project that could have a huge impact someday.
Those are great suggestions.
Yeah,
And, even just talking about first aid with your friends and family can make a difference.
right.
It gets people thinking about it.
Yeah,
Maybe even motivates them to learn more.
absolutely. The more we normalize these conversations,
Yeah.
the more prepared we'll be as a community.
For sure.
And, that sense of preparedness can be incredibly empowering.
It's like instead of feeling scared or overwhelmed by the thought of an emergency,
Right.
you feel like you have the tools and the knowledge to handle it.
Exactly. It's about shifting from fear to confidence,
Okay.
from feeling helpless to feeling empowered.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
We've talked about CPR, AEDs, choking burns,
Right.
sprains,
Right.
even building a personalized first aid kit.
Yes.
Is there anything we've missed? Any other first aid gems we need to uncover?
Well, we could spend hours diving into the nuances of different first aid scenarios.
Yeah.
But for now, I think the most important takeaway is this.
Okay.
Never underestimate the power of knowledge.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
And in the case of first aid, that knowledge could literally save a life.
You got it. So keep learning, keep practicing,
Yeah.
and keep sharing that knowledge with others.
It's amazing how much we've covered, in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From the ABCs of CPR to building our own first aid kits. I feel like I've learned so much, but I think more importantly, I feel like empowered to actually use this knowledge.
Yeah.
If I ever need to.
That's the goal, right? To move beyond simply knowing the information
Right.
to feeling confident and prepared to act in a real life situation.
Exactly. But I'm also realizing that first aid isn't just about memorizing the steps or the techniques.
Right.
It's about having the awareness to assess the situation and make smart decisions under pressure.
You hit the nail on the head there. It's
Okay.
about that critical thinking piece.
Okay.
Staying calm, gathering information, and figuring out the best course of action based on the specific situation.
Okay, so let's say I'm in a situation where someone needs help.
Okay.
What are some key things to keep in mind when, assessing the scene?
Well, first and foremost, your own safety is paramount.
Right.
You can't help someone if you put yourself in danger.
Okay.
So before you rush in, take a moment to scan the environment.
Okay.
Are there any hazards? Is the scene safe to approach?
You wouldn't want to become another victim.
Exactly. Once you've determined it's safe to approach, you can start gathering information.
Okay.
What happened? Are there any bystanders who witnessed the event?
Uh-huh.
What are the person's symptoms?
It's like being a detective again,
Yes,
piecing together the clues to figure out like what happened and how to help.
precisely. And remember, communication is key.
Okay.
Talk to the person if they're conscious and responsive.
Right.
Reassure them that help is on the way.
Okay.
Even just offering a calm presence can make a huge difference.
And if the person is unconscious,
Yeah,
should you still try to talk to them?
absolutely.
Okay.
Even if they can't respond, they might still be able to hear you.
Right.
Keep talking to them, explaining what you're doing and offering encouragement.
Wow.
It might sound strange, but it can actually be comforting for them.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've assessed the scene,
Yeah,
gathered information,
right.
and now it's time to act.
Yes.
But with so many potential first aid scenarios,
Right.
how do you prioritize what to do first?
That's where those ABCs we talked about earlier come back into play.
Oh.
Airway, breathing, and circulation.
Right.
Those are always your top priorities, regardless of the specific injury or illness.
So always focus on those like life-sustaining
Mhm.
functions first,
Exactly.
and then address any other injuries or issues.
Yes.
Got it. But even with all this knowledge and preparation,
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be an element of uncertainty in an emergency situation.
That's true.
Right.
There's no way to predict exactly what will happen or how you'll react.
Yeah.
But having this knowledge, having practiced these skills,
Yeah.
it gives you a framework, a
Yes.
foundation to build upon.
It's like instead of feeling completely lost and overwhelmed,
Right.
you have a roadmap,
Yeah.
a plan of action.
Exactly. And, even if you don't remember every single step perfectly,
Right.
even if you make a mistake,
Uh-huh.
the fact that you're willing to try to step up and help,
Well-
that's what truly matters.
It's about having the courage to act,
Yes.
even when you're not sure if you're doing everything perfectly.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, being willing to help, to offer comfort and support,
Yeah.
that's the essence of first aid. It's about human connection, compassion, and recognizing that we all have a role to play in caring for one another.
It's funny. We started this deep dive talking about CPR and AEDs.
Right.
But it feels like we've uncovered so much more than just technical skills.
I agree. It's about a mindset,
Yeah.
a way of being in the world.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing our own potential to make a difference, to be those everyday heroes.
And it all starts with taking that first step, seeking out knowledge,
Yeah,
and embracing the power of preparedness.
well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. What's the most important takeaway you hope they carry with them from this conversation?
I hope they walk away feeling empowered, knowing that they have the potential to make a difference in an emergency situation.
For sure.
And more than that, I hope they feel inspired to share this knowledge with their loved ones, their friends, their communities.
Because at the end of the day, first aid isn't just about saving lives.
Right.
It's about building a more resilient, more connected, and more compassionate world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay prepared.